Welcome to the Faculty Exchange. I am Dr. Dash. I am a professor of law and accounting, and we are here today with distinguished professors from the Fenimore Fisher College of Business, and we are going to tackle trade policy and tariffs and how the U.S. administration is changing them and shaping global markets. Okay, Dr. Crawford, to you first. Go ahead and tell us what are kind of the long and short-term impacts of U.S. tariff policy?
The challenge that we have right now is that the tariff policies are evolving, and every day you go to the news and you find out more and more about the tariff policies. I think what's happening is that the intent of the Trump administration is really to box in China with the tariff policy. So what he's done is he's implementing tariffs across the board, and with the intent that we'll have trade partners align with the U.S., and then eventually, as the trade partners align with the U.S., it will isolate China from world trade.
Yeah, but China is such a large economy on its own. Isolating China is not going to be a permanent impact. Short term is that it is affecting so much of the small businesses within the United States because tariffs is a tax. So yes, who is paying those taxes? And so once you're increasing the input prices, the output prices are going to increase. And who is that being passed on to? The U.S. consumers. So the short-term impact is that prices are going to go up. And if prices are going to go up, then inflation is going to go up and all the other factors that's going to go with it. I understand that the intent is to put a squeeze on China is to allow them to pay more. But for the short term, I think the U.S. consumers is feeling more of it.
I agree with your short-term impact. I do think that there is an impact, or the intent is to box in China a little bit, since it is a global power that's rising and competing much more with the United States. But I also think the number one thing is to try to get closer to a balance of trade with all countries, because the United States has been the largest market by far.
Yes.
In the last 40 years or so. By boxing that in and by trying to get that balance of trade more even, the attempt is to bring more production into the United States and to guard against a lot of manufacturing and sources from elsewhere being able to provide a product cheaper to the United States. Now, I agree the short term at least, it's going to be painful. There's no doubt.
Sure, but even if you're moving manufacturing, if the intent is to get more manufacturing into the United States, it takes a while to build plant and machinery and everything that goes along with that. So the intermediary piece of it, the short-term and the long-term impact of it is that it is going to take time. So if you're coming with a tariff policy, that's good, but it needs to be more stable. There's too much helter-skelter going, it's up, it's down. If it's more stable, I think that the jolt on the economy will be less of an impact than it is, because right now the short-term and the impact, it's a significant swing.
And I think that, President Trump has taken the stance to go hard, right? And that's sort of his approach to many things. And so he is trying to get this reaction also from the markets. So trying to open that up into a discussion. So I think that in a sense, I see how right now we have this uncertainty, but thinking on the long term, because President Trump is in the House for 4 years, and then who's next? And what is going to be their policy on this? Because I agree that the consistency of this approach could eventually lead to something positive, whereas right now we have this short-term impact of increased prices and so forth. But it's going to be an effort of how do we make this sustainable into the future. So that intentional planning that can be passed on and that different parties can buy into, because we see the pendulum always tends to swing. And so that's also a question that I think remains open, and that legislators and future administrations need to think about, because there is an opening that is happening here. It's a shock, but past the 4 years, what else can be there to sustain this.
We got to get
Yeah.
through this year
Yes.
before we start
Well, that
worrying.
is true too.
Before we start worrying about
Yeah,
4 years away.
exactly.
I think one of the
Yeah.
challenges right now is the question of what are we really trying to accomplish? Because the question is,
goal?
is it a tariff? Is it supposed to be a revenue stream, or are we doing it for reciprocity?
Yes.
And so the president up to this point has talked about both. He talks about, well, we're bringing in all this revenue into the country through tariffs, and at the same time, he's also saying, well, what we need to do is seek reciprocity.
Yes.
And if we're seeking reciprocity, what's going to happen is, I think eventually our trade partners are going to get on board and they'll agree with that because they'll see that as just trying to make trade fair.
Yes.
If we go to our trade partners and we're doing it to increase a revenue stream,
Yes.
the trade partners are going to see that as what you're trying to do is you're trying to take advantage of
Yes,
us.
yes.
And so we won't have the cooperation from our trade partners going forward.
Yes.
And I think that's an interesting point because coming from a Latin American perspective, I see where China has made strong advancements into foreign policy and gaining influence through foreign investments in Latin America. That taking advantage sense, right? And so I think that we had a deal just recently between China and the U.S. But then what happened right after that? China goes to talk to Latin American presidents and tells them we are not about tyranny, taking advantage of you guys, implying that the U.S. is.
Yeah.
And so that, especially in emerging markets, that's going to be something that needs to be tactfully navigated as well from the government and the diplomacy perspective so that we don't land into this space.
Yeah.
But instead, we take opportunity to, there is this shock, but even in this shock, how can we facilitate positive change for all parties?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So do you feel like there are enough skilled workers here for them to actually bring back the manufacturing, or how long do you think that process would take?
Wow, I think that it's not whether or not we have skilled workers in the United States. We do have the skilled workers.
Right.
Can we afford
Exactly.
to pay those skilled workers?
That's exactly right.
It's a cost.
Well,
It's a cost that's involved.
Not only afford to pay those skilled
Yeah.
workers, it's what's the cost of the product then once you pay the higher wage.
There you go, because the labor cost is part of the input prices. Their benefits is part of the input prices, your cost of goods sold. So now you made a product. Are there American consumers willing to pay that cost for that product? And if they're not willing to pay the cost, it's not build it and they will come. Is we're going to make a product, but no one is interested. The cost is too much. The input price is too much to give an output price for you to have a benefit of it. But we do have labor. We do have skilled labor
we
in
have
the
the
U.S.
labor.
We do have
What about
the labor.
How long would it take then to set up the manufacturing, get the laborers in there and trained, and go ahead and run with it? Because like you were saying, tariff policy is changing. If it's stable for a while, then we can go ahead and create the manufacturing and move forward. Do you have kind of an estimate for how long it would take to create all of that?
I would say 5 to 10 years.
It's a long time.
So 5 to 10 years to even build the factory, or maybe longer than 10 years to bring in the actual labor force, or to get American mindset to be willing to pay more for the product. Is made in America, is it better? You have to change the mindset of consumers, because everything is driven by consumer sentiments. If we're optimistic about an American product, we will pay more for an American product.
I think one of the things, when I look at manufacturing, one of the things that's happened in the U.S. in the last 30 years is we've lost our capabilities.
That's true.
And as a result of that, the average age of people in manufacturing, the manufacturing workforce, the average age is 39 years old.
Wow.
And so we've got an older workforce that's currently working in manufacturing. We're not training the younger generation to go into manufacturing. We've eliminated things like shop class and those type of things, and as a result of that, I think we have a capability issue that we have to deal with too.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. Wow, that was some great discussion. We've got a lot more to discuss, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to the ORU Capital Markets Trading Floor, a cutting-edge classroom designed to replicate a real-life learning experience. The Capital Markets Trading Floor uses state-of-the-art equipment to train students on actual tools of the trade. A flagship in industry, the Bloomberg Terminal offers students the ability to become certified on its use. Another industry leader, FactSet software allows students to gain access to market data from any location. Students learn so much more when they're able to invest actual money to make real-time trades in the stock market. The Student Managed Investment Fund was started with an initial donor investment of $350,000. The Practicum in Portfolio Management is held in the capital markets trading floor. It is a graduate course designed to give students hands-on experience with industry tools and decision-making for live stock investments. Student portfolio managers are taught stock analysis techniques by experts in the field. Presentations of their analysis and final decisions are made to industry leaders in an advisory capacity. Capital Markets Trading Floor here at Oral Roberts University is a cutting-edge classroom that is training up future business leaders for the finance industry.
Welcome back. In our first segment, we talked about how tariffs were shaping and changing local markets long-term and short-term. We're now going to transition into talking about how believers are reacting to these tariffs. How do you guys think believers are reacting to tariffs?
You know, I think that's a very important question, especially thinking in our context here in the Fenimore and Fisher College of Business, where we are, translating faith into action, into business action. The word believers is critical to that. And so looking at a moment of uncertainty, right? We're talking about how in the short term there is some uncertainty, and then even in the long term there are still questions that remain. But it reminds me of moments in the classroom when we talk about opportunities that are in disguise. Sometimes the markets may be down or times may be difficult, and the traditional approach would be, panic. What do we do? But I think those are moments of opportunity to recalibrate, to see where can we head from here, to think about strategies that are going to help us grow as a business. And so I'm thinking on companies that we've discussed several case studies in our classes, and one of those, for example, is Southwest Airlines, emerging from a moment where airlines had difficulties and they were becoming pricey, and only certain people could get on airplanes. But yet in those moments, Southwest Airlines found a special niche where they could get into and create a whole new market, for the discount airlines. And so in the similar way, I think that this is going to open up opportunities for creativity. And I don't necessarily think that this is the end of, okay, what are we going to do now?
I agree with what you're saying. I also think that with the elections that we just had, the U.S. population is kind of split between 50-50 and who might be feeling more secure and who might be more feeling a lot of unrest and concern. And so there's a lack of peace in there. When we're in our classrooms, how we talk about, as believers, we know where to get our source of peace. We know who we belong to. We know who knows the future and understands the future, and who is leading us and is taking care of us regardless of all this chaos that's going on. And what's driving a lot of the uncertainty and the fear and the unrest in people these days is the unknown.
Yes.
We don't have certainty. It's driving both the markets, and when I say market, I mean stock market, but it's also driving the economy. It's the unknown, because we do not know the outcome of all this, which creates anxiety amongst the people. But we know who holds our hand and who holds the future. And we can teach that and talk about that in class.
In my portfolio management class, for example, this semester we had a portfolio where we actually managing stocks and seeing how they see how they perform. And one of the things we talk about is that within investment, you need to have an investment policy, a personal investment policy that's going to drive your decisions. From believers' perspective, we know we're occupying until the Lord comes. Part of that occupancy is that we're building wealth, and we're building wealth because we need that wealth to further the kingdom of God. And so when the stock market was going helter-skelter, and my students were actually actually employing policies that they were derived from, okay, I'm going to have safety of principal and adequate return, and I'm going to make sure that I'm using the correct strategy to invest those funds, they were still losing money. And they're like, what do we do? And we're like, calm down. We're doing this for long term. Investment is long term. It's not just what is happening now. So what I say to believers, when you see the stock market is going haywire, students ask me, Dr. Constable, did you look at your portfolio? I didn't look at it. I have peace when everybody was like, oh my gosh, the market loses half of the money. And I'm like, your peace and your guidance and your future is in God's hands. What I tell my students is, why worry about tomorrow? That the God you serve already lives in your tomorrow. And yes, it's money actually leaving the market and everything is happening. It's real money. But your peace lies in the Lord, that He has you. He says that the birds doesn't worry about how they're going to be fed. Not only that, the Word of God said, I was young and now I'm old. Now I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging for bread.
Amen.
So as believers, we should never be so concerned about what is happening to tariffs. The Lord is going to provide. He is our shepherd, and we shall not want. And because we shall not, then we shouldn't worry. I mean, having doubt is not the absence of faith, but knowing the God you serve and know that He owns a cattle on 1,000 hills, we should rest, sleep at night like babies. We shouldn't be worried. We shouldn't be worried about it. We're the ones who need to give the world peace when the world is so concerned about, oh my gosh, everything went up. Okay, find a substitute product.
Yeah.
Find a substitute product. You don't have to drink the 2% oatmeal chai something. Find a substitute. You're going to be fine, right? You're going to be fine.
If we go back and look at what's happened in the last month, what's happened to the market in the last month, when we look at the financial stability of companies, they haven't changed. And we look at overall, what really has changed in the economy in the last month. The reason why the market has taken such a dive was because of just panic. It was just sheer panic. And so as a Christian, one of the things that we have in our as a walk in faith is we can realize that we don't have to panic.
Yes.
Because God is there for us. Now we have to be well educated in markets.
Use wisdom.
We need to use wisdom, and we need to do the research.
Yes.
But one of the things is we've got that blessed assurance
Yes.
that we don't have to panic, but we'll check things out.
Yes, and don't make decisions based on fear and greed.
That's it.
Because a lot of people, what they do, they buy out of fear, and they buy out of greed and sell out of fear. And Doug, yes, it's uncertainty, but the uncertainty comes from people are selling off because they're not optimistic about what is going on in the economy. It is that lack of optimism. And when your actual retirement plan is losing money, even as a believer, you're wondering, can I retire? And then if the can is not coming up, but so it's realistic. We're not going to sit in a world of like, oh, we cannot be too heavily minded that we're not earthly good.
Right.
Yes, we're actually losing money, but as believers, we cannot panic. We cannot panic.
Wow, that is really good. So first of all, as a believer, that is good to hear that you have the peace that passes all understanding, but we've got a lot more to come, so stay right there.
ORU's main focus is the Holy Spirit and hearing from God.
My professors really believed in me. I met friends that I know I will have for a lifetime.
The presence of God is 24/7.
I feel I wasn't just here for a diploma, I was here for a life transformational experience.
Welcome back. We are here at the ORU Capital Markets trading floor, and what we want to talk about now is how is Wall Street reacting and what do business leaders want to see from this administration's policy on tariffs? Mr. Crowell, what do you think?
Well, I think the biggest impact by far on the stock markets, the capital markets, is simply the uncertainty. I think the fact that they do not know and cannot predict exactly what earnings are going to be like, exactly what the impact of these tariffs, or potential tariffs, are, and can't predict the timetable of them, the time length of them, has created immense volatility. there's clearly impact on the consumers, and this is a consumer-driven economy, which means there's going to be clear impact on the businesses, but the businesses have uncertainty. Our businesses are also incredibly linked. Their supply chain is linked all over the United States. We saw that immensely during COVID, and that parts come from all over, and you may think that you buy from one location because that's where your invoice comes from, or maybe that's where it ships from, and you go call them and find out, well, wait a minute, they got 8 parts coming from 7 different countries. And so to calculate the ramifications of that on your financial statements is incredibly hard. Well, how's an analyst? How's an analyst is predicting what the returns are going to be from any company, going to produce it? They cannot calculate it.
Yeah, those are great points. When you look at the iPhone, the glass on the iPhone, it comes from 26 different countries. And the mini chip on the iPhone comes from 20 different countries. And so you just think of the complexity that you're dealing with when you look at your supply chain.
Yeah, and I think that companies in general are doing a hold and see strategy right now. They're holding on to their revenues from previous years. They're letting everything sit in retained earnings. If they have to pay out dividends, yes, they're paying out dividends because that's their policy that they need to pay out dividends. But what they're investing in right now is very, very minuscule. They're trying to tighten up their payrolls. They're laying off people. They're duplicating. They're removing duplicity from any positions. So they're holding and seeing what is going on and not necessarily doing any expansion. And if you're not expanding as a company, then what is happening to the economy? It's going to eventually start shrinking, because if people are laid off and they don't have a paycheck to spend, if they don't have a paycheck to spend, they're not buying. And if they're not buying, what is happening? So the whole ripple effect of it. So businesses in general are just holding on to see what is happening.
Because of the uncertainty.
Because of the uncertainty. So because they're unsure. They're holding on because they're unsure, not because they're not making money. Some of them are still making money, but they're unsure as to what things are going to look like. And then Jerome Powell, they met last week, and the decision is we're going to hold short-term interest rates still at the same level because there's still inflation and there's still uncertainty. So I think it's the uncertainty that is driving a lot of what is going on in the economy. I mean, the only person that knows the future is Jesus. So uncertainty is a natural course of business. But I think that's the main thing that's driving business decisions right now, is that we do not know right now.
And I think obviously that speaks to a strategic perspective as well, right? So at a strategy level, we're holding because we don't want to invest in something that may not work as well. At the same time, at the tactical level, though, I think there are things that are happening. You know, in the social media space, right?
Yes.
So, where we have a lot of these intermediary facilitated purchases, which are really growing. And even through this, they're growing more because now there is a push. Well, now the tariffs are in place, so let's get the product before it gets more expensive. So you know, a lot of market, those social media driven markets are pushing that. You know, like let's get this product sold. And consumers are buying into that. So, oh, you know, I really want that before the tariff expense hits in. So I think, again, there are opportunities right now at the tactical level that some businesses are taking advantage of. And of course, it's going to vary by industry. But overall, you know, how does that trickle up all the way to the stock level, right? And the market, that's very different. So I agree with that uncertainty being the driver there.
And that's one of the things that we emphasize in the classroom. With our students, we say, look for those opportunities. And realizing that during the Great Depression, some of our greatest companies were founded during the Great Depression.
That is
so they
true.
took advantage of those opportunities. And that's what we're trying to instill in our students is there's always opportunities out there. You just have to be looking for them.
I remember I was in a conversation. This is a Fortune 500 company. I was in a conversation with the CEO. And I asked him about the stocks, you know, for the company, because this was a high growth company, and the stock had been sort of fluctuating, sort of up and down, and I was employed, and this was really more a commemoration thing of some projects we had accomplished, and And so I was talking with him, and he said, I asked him, what do you think about the stock? There's some fluctuation going on in there. And he said, to be honest, I'm not necessarily driven right now by the stocks because of there is some uncertainty. Back at that time, there was uncertainty as well. But we're just pushing forward our strategy, and we'll continue with that. And so over time, it's been about 10 years since that happened, and I've seen that stock value continue to increase and the strategy continue to pay off. So sometimes you got to stick to your strategy as well.
Exactly.
Well, if you're an individual company looking at that, I agree, because it's always relative. Just the fact that me going down, if everybody else is going down the same amount,
Exactly.
you're fine. Your company's fine.
Yeah.
If you're going down worse, then why?
Yeah, yeah.
What's going on? Do I need to understand?
Yep.
So I understand that from a company standpoint, their strategy is going to remain the same. But they can also find strategic ways to grow, just like you're talking about, or to increase your value at that same time.
Are there any opportunities right now that companies can take advantage of during this sort of down market?
If you're a company in the country right now, a smaller, may have been competing against international products coming in, boy, it's a great time.
Great time.
I think so too.
Because the price of that product coming in, well, it's, depending on when it arrives here at that higher tariff level, you have a great chance. You now have a price advantage because of the tax that's been added against your competition. It provides a great opportunity for your business. So finding those businesses is an excellent chance right now.
Wow, these have been some great thoughts. If you were going to leave us with some key takeaways, what would they be?
We're in a lot of uncertainty right now, a lot of chaos, both domestically, and with the tariffs. It seemingly puts anxiety on individuals, but we know who's in charge. Yeah. We have faith. We believe. At ORU, we help teach the students that and how to believe and how to have confidence in that. We'll be just fine.
This has been a great discussion. What I'm taking away from it is that we are in a time of uncertainty, and we're aware of that. But overall, if we look at the history of the market, the history of business here in the United States, we have been prosperous over the years, recognizing there is fluctuation in the markets over time. But we prepare for those fluctuations, knowing that they're going to occur. And again, these are the type of things that we like to teach our students, so that they too can be great business professionals as well as great investors.
Yeah. I am just grateful for the discussion that we have had, and I'm confident that as Oral Roberts University, we're raising up whole leaders for the whole world who are ready to conquer the world. We just have a massive graduation, over 1,000, and we know we have individuals from the College of Business and from all other colleges who are ready to tackle what's going on with every global issues, but also they have confidence knowing that they have the Holy Spirit to help them to guide those decisions. And because we know that they're prepared, then we're not worried about anything. Our trust and our hope rests in our relationship with God, and that's going to be okay.
Amen. Those are some really great thoughts. I think that the Lord opens up our eyes to see needs, so that He can help us connect with the provision that He has for us. And so as we are seeing needs in the market, those are opportunities for us to receive His provision. So I think that having the confidence to go forward is something that I take from this conversation.
Wow, that was a great discussion. Thank you to these distinguished panelists. If you would like to learn more about ORU and learn from these great professors, go to our website. Thank you for joining us for the Faculty Exchange.